The words hit me like a slap across the face. Your job is to work while your sister enjoys life. Simple as that. Dad's voice sliced through the warm Thanksgiving air, while Mom laughed at something Sawyer said, her hand gesturing toward the fresh manicure she'd gotten during her $3,000 spa weekend. Money I'd earned managing our family's failing art supply store. I'm Carara Finley, and I just finished a 14-hour drive from Santa Fe with quarterly reports that proved what I'd been trying to tell them for months. We were drowning. While I'd been calculating which bills we could delay another week, Sawyer had been getting hot stone massages and champagne facials. The contrast between us couldn't have been starker. Paint still clung to my fingernails despite 3 rounds of scrubbing. Exhaustion carved lines around my eyes. Sawyer lounged in her chair like she was posing for a magazine, crystal wine glass catching the light as her perfect nails tapped against its rim. The house smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey, but underneath that warmth lay something bitter. Years of accumulated resentment that nobody wanted to acknowledge. I set my laptop on the granite counter, a counter I'd helped finance, and opened our expense spreadsheet. The suppliers threatening to cut us off unless we pay the balance. Dad continued carving the turkey, each slice deliberate and controlled. You missed the acrylic inventory update. Then he turned to Sawyer with the kind of smile that never appeared when he looked at me. How is the facial, princess? Something fractured inside my chest. 25 years of being the responsible daughter, while watching my sister float through life on money I'd earned through 16-hour workdays and sleepless nights spent balancing books that never quite balanced. So, I work while she enjoys. That's the plan. His eyes found mine across the table. Cold. Calculating. Final. Your job is to work while your sister enjoys life. Simple as that. If you have a problem, there's the door. The room went silent except for the oven fan's steady hum. Mom's laugh died mid-note. Even Sawyer's wine glass stopped its rhythmic tapping. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against hardwood floors I'd personally refinished 2 summers ago when they couldn't afford professional help.
Fine.
I'll leave. I closed my laptop with a soft click. And you can start paying your own bills. Simple as that. The walk to the front door felt like crossing a bridge that was already burning behind me. Have you ever had that moment when you realized your family saw you as nothing more than free labor? What happened next would make me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and the price of freedom. 3 months of silence. My phone never rang. The family group chat continued without me. Photos of Sunday dinners and holiday preparations flowing past like a river I'd stopped drinking from. In my small Santa Fe apartment, I learned to breathe without the weight of everyone else's expectations crushing my chest. But this story started long before that Thanksgiving dinner. When Sawyer crashed Dad's BMW into the decorative fountain at Riverside Mall, she was 16 and crying about how sorry she felt. I was 22, working double shifts at the bakery to pay for my own car insurance. Guess who covered the repair bill? Carara's so good with money, Mom had said, as if my competence was a personality quirk rather than a survival skill. When Sawyer needed college tuition for her art therapy degree, I signed the student loan papers while she picked out dorm room decorations. While she took pottery classes and weekend yoga retreats in Sedona, I worked retail and waited tables, sending money home for family emergencies that somehow always coincided with Sawyer's social calendar. The pattern never changed. Sawyer created problems. I solved them. She dreamed. I worked. She lived. I survived. Mom enabled it with gentle phrases that sounded like compliments, but cut like wire. Sawyer's more creative. Carara's just naturally responsible. Dad reinforced it through expectations that felt like natural law. I should handle the books, manage suppliers, work weekends. Meanwhile, Sawyer's Instagram showed wine tastings in Napa and beach resorts in California. Posts tagged #blessed and #livingmybestlife, funded by credit cards that appeared in my name. You recognize this, don't you? Maybe you're the one working double shifts while your sibling gets handed everything. Maybe you watch your parents fund your brother's 4th business venture while you pay rent with tip money and grocery store coupons. That hollow feeling in your stomach right now? That's recognition. In Santa Fe, I rented a studio apartment with windows that actually opened. The morning light hit white walls that belonged to me, not to family obligations. I started freelancing, logos for small businesses, websites for local artists. For the first time in my adult life, money I earned stayed in my account. But every night brought the same dream. That dinner table. Dad's dismissive voice. Sawyer's laugh echoing off kitchen tiles I'd helped install during my spring break while she vacationed in Mexico. If this hits too close to home, if you've ever felt like the family workhorse while others collected the glory, stay with me. What I discovered about my family's secret plans will make your blood boil. And trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. 3 months into my new life, I thought I'd built something they couldn't touch. The email arrived at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was making coffee in my small kitchen, watching morning light paint the mountains outside my window. My phone buzzed against the counter. Subject line: You deserve to know what they did. Unknown sender. No profile picture. The kind of message that usually gets deleted without a second thought. My finger hovered over the trash icon. But something about those 7 words made me hesitate. Someone out there thought I deserved to know something. After a lifetime of being told what I didn't need to worry about, what wasn't my business, what was too complicated for me to understand. I clicked. The attachment was a PDF labeled Trust Amendment 2019. The file took forever to load on my phone, each second stretching like hours. When it finally opened, Dad's signature sprawled across the bottom page like he'd signed it with flourish. The document transferred full ownership of the store and the family house to Sawyer. But the date made my coffee cup slip from my fingers. One day after my 25th birthday. The same week I'd signed loan papers for $50,000 to keep the store from bankruptcy. While I'd been working 18-hour days to save their business, they'd been planning to steal it. Morning light slanted through my kitchen window at exactly the wrong angle, illuminating coffee spreading across tile floor. The bitter taste on my tongue matched the nausea climbing my throat. My heartbeat grew so loud it drowned out everything else. The neighbor's dog barking, traffic humming past, the normal sounds of a world that suddenly felt foreign. They hadn't just asked me to leave that Thanksgiving dinner. They'd already taken everything while I was still sitting at their table, still trying to save them, still believing family meant protection instead of predation. I called Mr. Dorsey, with shaking hands. He'd been our accountant since before I could walk, a man I'd trusted to handle our taxes every spring. Carara. His voice carried guilt I'd never heard before. Your parents told me you agreed to sign it. They even sent an email from your address. I never signed anything. Long pause. Papers shuffling. Oh, honey. I have the email right here. It came from your account last month. Someone had hacked my email, forged my signature, stolen my identity to rob me while I worked myself into the ground for them. The police officer barely glanced up from his paperwork. Family disputes are civil matters. You'll need a lawyer. As if identity theft became acceptable when committed by relatives. That's when I understood. Nobody was coming to save me. Have you ever stood completely alone in a fight that should have been winnable? If they thought forging documents would silence me, they'd underestimated who they were dealing with. I'd spent years tracking their finances, every account, every credit line, every hidden expense that never quite added up. Those skills that had kept their business afloat would now expose their lies. I started with Sawyer's LinkedIn profile, founder and CEO of Finley Flame Company. Her bio read like a magazine feature. Building a luxury candle empire from passion and dedication. Professional photos showed her in tailored blazers, standing in what appeared to be a high-end studio space with exposed brick walls and industrial lighting. Passion and dedication. She'd never shown passion for anything except spending money she hadn't earned. But the address listed for her business made my fingers freeze over the keyboard. Same street as our family store. Same building number. Different suite. I pulled up the business registration documents. Every form, every loan application, every piece of paperwork bore the same guarantor signatures. Mine. Forged with the same careful precision I'd seen on the trust amendment. Sawyer hadn't just stolen my inheritance. She'd been using our family store's credit line to fund her luxury candle brand while I'd been begging suppliers for payment extensions. The bank statements painted the complete picture. Premium wax suppliers, $15,000. Luxury packaging solutions, $8,000. Boutique marketing agency, $12,000. Professional photography services, $5,000. Website development, $7,000. All charged to accounts bearing my name and social security number. All funding a business that was literally stealing my identity. I printed everything. Bank statements, business filings, loan applications, social media posts. The evidence covered my kitchen table like pieces of a puzzle that finally revealed its complete, ugly picture. For the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never allowed myself. Clean, justified rage. Not the guilty anger of family conflict, but the focused fury of someone who'd been systematically robbed. Every family dinner, where Sawyer had talked about her struggling artist phase. Every time Mom had said she was finding herself and needed our support. Every guilt trip about helping family through difficult times. All lies. She wasn't struggling. She was thriving. Building her empire with my credit, my reputation, my financial future, while playing the victim who needed protection. I started organizing everything into files. Screenshots, bank records, business registrations, social media evidence. If they wanted to play games with my life, I'd show them what real strategy looked like. Have you ever discovered someone close to you is living a double life at your expense? When the mask finally comes off, and you see who they really are. Because what happened next involved evidence that would destroy them completely. 3 weeks into my investigation, someone knocked on my door at exactly 7 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. In Santa Fe, I'd become the neighbor who kept to herself, who nodded politely but never lingered for conversation. The knock came again, measured, patient, professional. The man standing in my hallway belonged in a different story. Tall, wearing a black coat that looked expensive without trying to. His eyes scanned my face like he was confirming something he already knew. Carara Finley? I nodded. Eli Bennett. Private investigator hired by an anonymous client. He handed me a manila folder sealed with red tape. His hands never shook, never hesitated. Everything about him suggested competence that cost money. You might want to sit down before opening that. The folder felt heavier than paper should. Inside were photographs, surveillance shots with timestamps and location markers. Professional quality that made my amateur detective work look like child's play. First photo, Sawyer and Dad meeting with a man in a charcoal suit outside a glass office building. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago. While I'd been printing bank statements in my kitchen, they'd been conducting business downtown. Second photo, the same man handing Dad a thick envelope. Dad's smile stretched wider than I'd seen in years. Genuine happiness. The kind he'd never shown when looking at me. Third photo, all three shaking hands in front of a corporate sign. Pinnacle Development Corporation. But the document underneath the photos changed everything. Real estate offer letter. $2.7 million. They plan to sell the store, the land, and the family home to developers building luxury condominiums. The deal included one critical clause. Both legal owners must sign. Both owners. They needed my signature. Everything clicked into place. The forged trust amendment wasn't just theft. It was preparation for the sale. They'd stolen my ownership specifically to authorize a multi-million-dollar transaction. Eli leaned forward. You could press charges. But if I were you, I'd make them think you already did. What do you mean? Fear works better than actual consequences sometimes. The threat can be more powerful than the reality. He left copies of everything and a business card containing only a phone number. As he reached my door, he paused. Your anonymous client believes in justice. Use these wisely. That night, evidence covered my kitchen table like pieces of a strategy game. For months, I'd been the victim scrambling to understand what was happening to me. Now I held all the cards. The frightened daughter who'd accepted blame and absorbed insults was gone. Someone else sat in her place, someone who understood that justice sometimes required playing the game better than the people who'd rigged it. I stared at my phone for 2 hours, finger hovering over the keyboard. The old Carrera wanted to call Dad directly. Give them a chance to explain. Turn this into a conversation instead of a war. 25 years of conditioning doesn't disappear overnight. The urge to fix, to smooth over, to be the reasonable one. But Eli's photographs lay spread across my coffee table like evidence in a crime scene. The numbers on the bank statements didn't lie. Neither would I. At 11:47 p.m., I typed 7 words that would change everything. Funny thing about forgeries, the FBI takes them seriously. No context. No explanation. Just enough truth to plant seeds of fear in soil I'd spent years preparing with my reliability.
Send.
My phone rang 53 minutes later. Sawyer's contact photo illuminated the screen. Her perfect smile from last Christmas, arms wrapped around parents who'd already planned to steal from me. I let it ring, then ring again. On the 3rd call, I answered. Carara? Her voice sounded raw, like she'd been crying. Please, we didn't mean. Dad said you'd never find out. For a moment, hearing her breakdown triggered every protective instinct I'd developed over the years. The automatic urge to comfort her, to minimize my own pain, to be the bigger person who absorbed damage to keep peace. But then I remembered $15,000 charged to premium wax suppliers. Find out what, Sawyer? My voice stayed level. Curious.
Cold.
The business stuff. It's complicated, but we can fix this. We can work something out. I stayed silent. Let her fill the quiet space with panic and half-formed promises. Every word she spoke was another admission of guilt. Carara, are you there? Please don't do anything crazy. We're family. Family. The word that had controlled me for decades suddenly felt empty. A sound without meaning. Good night, Sawyer. I hung up and powered off my phone. Outside my window, Santa Fe stretched across the valley like scattered stars. Mountain silhouettes cut sharp lines against purple sky. For the first time in years, I smiled without forcing it. Winning felt different than I'd expected. Satisfaction mixed with grief. Mourning the family I'd thought I had while celebrating the strength I'd finally discovered. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Tonight, I sat in the quiet of my own apartment, holding evidence that would destroy them, feeling something I'd never experienced before, the clean, simple power of truth. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? Tomorrow morning, the whole town would learn exactly what kind of people the Finleys really were. 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 2 text messages that started with "call me now." I woke up to my phone buzzing like an angry hornet against the nightstand. The news notification made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. Local business deal under federal investigation. Documents seized. They thought I'd gone to the police. I hadn't. What I'd done was simpler and more devastating. I'd forwarded Eli's photographs to one person, Rebecca Morrison, the developer's wife. A woman whose charity galas filled the society pages, whose reputation sparkled cleaner than her diamond earrings, and whose tolerance for fraud measured exactly 0. By 8 a.m., news vans crowded the street outside Pinnacle Development Corporation. By noon, reporters were calling it multi-million-dollar real estate deal involves alleged document forgery. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your anonymous client is pleased. Phase 2 begins now. Phase 2 arrived as a financial audit triggered by media scrutiny. Every bank account, every business transaction, every signature would be examined by forensic accountants who cared nothing about family dynamics. Only facts. Dad called at 2:17 p.m. His voice carried panic I'd never heard before. Carara, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I settled into my chair by the window, mountain peaks visible in the distance. Is it getting out of hand? Or is it finally getting honest? You don't understand the whole situation. I understand you forged my signature to steal $3 million. I understand you used my credit to fund Sawyer's business while calling me selfish for wanting basic respect. What am I missing? Silence stretched between us like a canyon. For 25 years, I'd feared disappointing him. Now he feared me. What do you want? Justice. Simple as that. By evening, the complete story had unraveled on local television. Mr. Dorsey admitted he'd felt uncomfortable with the signature discrepancies, but trusted family assurances. Bank officials revealed that loan documents had been processed with unusual speed. Even Mom's sister called the news station, saying she'd always worried about how Carara was treated. I watched from my small apartment, feeling something I'd never experienced, Truth winning over manipulation without anger or revenge fantasies. Just clean, simple justice unfolding like morning light across the valley. Have you ever watched bullies realize their victim had become stronger? Seen entitled people face real consequences for the first time? Because what happened next was better than any ending Hollywood could write. The financial audit took 3 weeks. 3 weeks where I watched their world crumble from the peaceful distance of Santa Fe, each day bringing new reports of systematic destruction. First, the bank froze every account connected to fraudulent loan documents. Sawyer's luxury candle empire shut down overnight when suppliers realized payment would never come. Her Instagram transformed from daily #BossLife posts to complete silence. The art supply store closed permanently. 40 years of family business ended not by market competition or economic forces, but by pure greed. Employees who'd worked there since I was a child found themselves jobless because my family chose theft over honesty. That part still cuts deep. Mrs. Henderson had worked the register for 15 years, knew every customer's name and their children's birthdays. Jose had managed delivery since I was 12, always slipping me candy when I helped after school. Good people paying the price for crimes they never committed. The district attorney's office filed charges that read like a crime novel: wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, bank fraud. Seeing those words in newspaper headlines next to photographs of the store where I'd learned to count change felt surreal. Dad hired a defense attorney whose hourly rate exceeded most people's weekly salary. Mom started attending therapy sessions that she documented on Facebook, her attempt at public rehabilitation. But Sawyer's fall was the most spectacular. Business license revoked. Loans defaulted. The IRS opened an investigation into unreported income that traced back 2 years. She moved back into her childhood bedroom, the same room where she'd planned her empire built on my stolen identity. The golden child had lost her shine permanently. Meanwhile, the mortgage company called me. As the legal owner of the house before the forged transfer, I was entitled to compensation for the illegal sale. The settlement would cover my student loans, the business loan, and leave enough to start over anywhere I chose. Justice, I learned, tastes like freedom, but smells like ashes. Victory felt hollow when it meant watching people I'd once loved reveal themselves as strangers. Eli Bennett called one final time. Your anonymous client wanted me to tell you, some battles are worth fighting alone, but healing isn't. There are people who believe in justice, and in you. The local community surprised me. Former store customers reached out with support. Business owners shared their own stories of family betrayal. I realized I wasn't alone. I was part of a larger story about people who'd found strength in truth. If you're fighting your own family nightmare, subscribe for how this ends. Because what happened next will show you why some bridges are worth burning. 6 months later, I signed a lease in Portland. Not running this time. Walking towards something I'd never had the courage to imagine. A life built entirely on my own terms. The settlement money became seed funding for something I'd never dreamed possible, my own design studio. Finley Creative specialized in branding for family-owned businesses. The irony felt intentional, like the universe offering me a chance to help others reclaim what was theirs. My first client walked through the door on a rainy Tuesday morning. Sarah Chin owned a small bakery that her brother had systematically destroyed, stealing recipes, poaching employees, opening a competing shop 3 blocks away using her exact menu. I need people to know the difference, she said, tears mixing with determination, between what's real and what's stolen. I understood completely. We rebuilt her brand from the ground up. New name, new identity, new story that showcased 30 years of authentic baking expertise. Within 2 months, customers were lining up outside her door while her brother's knockoff shop sat empty. There's something powerful about helping people reclaim their stories. Mrs. Henderson found work at Powell's Books, where they valued her 4 decades of customer service experience. Jose started his own delivery service and hired me to design his logo, a simple compass pointing forward. Good people land on their feet when they're not carrying toxic weight. Mom sent letters I read but never answered. Therapy language about healing family wounds and processing generational trauma. Pretty words that couldn't resurrect trust or undo forged signatures. Dad never reached out. Neither did Sawyer. The unexpected closure came from Mr. Dorsey. He drove to Portland specifically to meet me, looking older than his 73 years suggested. I should have questioned those documents, he said, hands trembling slightly around his coffee cup. 40 years of accounting, and I let relationships override ethics. I failed you. His apology meant more than any family reconciliation ever could. Sometimes strangers become your truest family. I learned to introduce myself differently. I'm Carara, I run a design studio. Instead of I'm Carara, I manage my family store. The shift felt seismic, from being defined by obligation to being defined by choice. My business grew through referrals. People who'd survived betrayal recognized authenticity instinctively. My client base became a network of survivors who'd refused to accept mistreatment as normal. I stopped dreaming about that Thanksgiving dinner table. Instead, I dreamed about possibilities, new cities, expanding businesses, people who would value me for who I was rather than what I could provide. Freedom, I learned, is the sweetest revenge. Last week, Thanksgiving arrived again. 2 years since the dinner that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. I spent it in Portland with 8 friends gathered around a table I'd bought with money I'd earned legitimately. No guilt, no obligation, no unspoken debts hanging over the meal like storm clouds. We cooked together, entrepreneurs, artists, survivors who understood that gratitude doesn't require accepting abuse. Maya shared her story of escaping a business partner who'd emptied their joint accounts. David talked about rebuilding after his father stole his restaurant concept. Stories of people who'd chosen themselves over toxic loyalty. Around that table, I measured the distance I'd traveled. Not just the 800 miles from Santa Fe to Portland, but the emotional journey from victim to someone who knew her worth and protected it without apology. My design studio now employs 12 people. We've helped over 200 small businesses rebuild after betrayal, partner theft, family sabotage, employee fraud. We've become specialists in the art of rising stronger, of transforming stolen identities into authentic brands that can't be duplicated. The legal consequences played out exactly as predicted. Dad received probation and 200 hours of community service. Sawyer paid fines and restitution that eliminated any remaining assets. The family house sold to cover legal debts. They moved to a rental property across town. Address I sometimes see on mail forwarding notices, but never visit. Justice served cold, exactly as promised. I'm writing a book now. The Family ATM. Breaking the Cycle of Financial Exploitation. A guide for people conditioned to finance their own mistreatment. The manuscript grows daily as more survivors share their stories. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed silent. If I'd accepted their narrative that my job was working while Sawyer enjoyed life. The path leads to financial ruin and emotional destruction, a future I escaped by walking away from that dinner table. Family loyalty should never cost your dignity, financial security, or mental health. Love isn't supposed to feel like imprisonment. Respect shouldn't flow in only one direction. If this story resonates with you, if you felt trapped in dynamics where your worth was measured by what you provided rather than who you are, understand this. You have more power than you realize. The door exists. Sometimes walking through it is the most loving choice for everyone involved. This Thanksgiving, I gave thanks for choosing truth over tradition, self-respect over family approval, freedom over fear. For the first time in my life, gratitude felt genuine. Sometimes the best family dinner is the one you're brave enough to leave.